Okay, thanks for being here today. Everyone, I'm Scott Wiener. I have the honor of representing San Francisco and Northern San Mateo County in the California State Senate, and the honor of being the lead author on Senate Bill 222. We'll be joined shortly by my colleague, Senator Henry Stern from Los Angeles. Today, the Senate Judiciary Committee will take a critical vote on Senate Bill 222. The Affordable Insurance and Climate Recovery Act. It's a first in the nation plan to tackle California's intertwined affordability and insurance crises. Welcome, Senator Stern. I'm joined by several courageous survivors of some of our state's recent devastating fires in Los Angeles, and by our incredible coalition of climate and consumer advocates to urge the Senate to keep this bill moving. Californians are paying a devastating price for the climate disasters that have and tragically will continue to wreak havoc on our state. Tens of thousands of people in Southern California just lost their homes and their, in some cases, big swaths of their community. Homes reduced to ash, cherished memories destroyed, and lives lost that will haunt all of us for years to come. This was the most destructive fire in the history of our state, and it happened in the middle of winter, when we're typically get a respite from wildfires. It has not been normal, but it is now normal. Just last year, Northern California was devastated by climate change exacerbated atmospheric rivers that flooded towns, washed away homes and infrastructure, and left billions of dollars in damage. Right now, Californians, you and I, are paying the immense costs of these disasters. Of course, first and foremost, the victims are paying the price, but we are also paying the price as taxpayers, as the state steps in, as it should, to help with recovery, and as policyholders, because all of our insurance rates are going up as a result of these climate-fueled disasters. We know that the FAIR Plan ran out of money, and so we're all now being surcharged to replenish that fund. And State Farm was just approved for a very significant rate increase. I wanted to say that the opposition to this bill has an entire campaign with, frankly, baseless claims about SB 222. They, rather than the oil industry simply taking responsibility for producing and selling and, frankly, forcing people to buy a product that is causing these disasters, they're claiming that a bill to actually deal with this issue so that we don't have constantly escalating insurance costs is somehow going to increase people's costs. This is not true. And in fact, we know that what is increasing people's costs is climate change, as caused by the fossil fuel industry. We know that food costs are going up given the impact on the agricultural industry of climate change. Utility costs are going up because the utilities have to spend so much on wildfire mitigation. This industry is driving the housing affordability crisis as insurance costs skyrocket. That means everyone is paying more, and it's harder and harder for people to afford a home or to stay in their home. We also know that the home hardening requirements, which many of us support, which are so important, the reason that we have to have home hardening requirements at the level we do is because of these climate-fueled disasters. We know that so many workers could not work after the LA fires, for example, and this is true in all of these disasters. These fires alone cost 161,000 workers $3.7 billion in lost income. And so these costs are growing and they're impacting everyone. And so for the oil industry to be putting out this propaganda that SB 222 is going to make life more expensive, it's not. That is made up. But what is making life more expensive is something that we're trying to start addressing with this bill, at least one aspect of those cost increases. So instead of all of this blame game, it'd be great if the oil industry actually stepped up. We know that the committee analysis for the Judiciary Committee was very favorable to this bill and had a very wise statement that these, quote, these companies are privatizing profits while socializing the costs of climate impacts such as worsening and more frequent wildfires. This is an industry that is making massive profits. The 5 US-based oil and gas companies, or the top 5 US-based fossil fuel companies, reported more than $250 billion in profits between 2021 and 2023. And so they are making a lot of money. They've been obstructing the transition to clean energy for decades. That's why I said forcing people to buy their product, because they don't always have other options. And then they are pushing off all the costs of their products onto us, onto the victims, taxpayers, and policyholders. So SB 222 will help bring some balance by providing that folks who are harmed in significant ways by climate fuel disasters can sue these oil companies for compensation, and allowing insurance companies to seek compensation, or what we call subrogation, so that as they pay out claims, it's not that it will no longer be the case that their only way to recoup those losses is by raising everyone's premiums. The oil industry should no longer have a pass. It should have a seat at the table. It should not be just on Californians to pay for these crises. So with that, it is great to have, I want to thank some of the survivors who are here today, and you'll hear from them in a moment. And so before we get to Senator Stern, if that's okay with you, Senator, I'd like to call up Moira Morell from Altadena. And I want to thank the victims for being here. It's really hard when you go through that level of trauma to be talking about it and public about it and reliving such a disaster. So thank you so much for being here. Oh, sorry.
When my wife and I purchased our home in 2021, our son was so proud. He was 5 at the time, and he would stop and talk to anybody, friends, strangers, and the first thing he would say is, "We have a new home. We have a new house." We were really proud too, and we paid our mortgage on time, our tax bills, and anything that we had left over went back into the house, making it as beautiful and comfortable as we could for our growing family. We lost that home this January. Everything that we owned and the home burnt to the ground. Telling our son, having to explain to him that everything he cared about, everything that was special to him was gone. His favorite books, favorite toys, the mural he had painted with my mother's grandmother was one of the hardest things that we've had to do. Well, I'm so grateful that our family is safe. We're at a loss as to where to go from here. My son, who's 8 years old now, he has anxiety about the fires. Anyone new he meets, or he sees someone who he hasn't seen since the fires, the first thing he asks is, "Did your home burn too?" We've moved around a lot since the fires, and every place that we land, the first thing he asks is, "How do we know that we are safe here?" Everything feels financially monstrous. We are, even with the health insurance that we were really lucky to have, it's a huge burden and a lift for us. These disasters are going to keep happening with more frequency and more intensity. These companies are denying what is happening because it benefits them when regular people are forced to pay. And let's be clear, that is what's happening here. Homeowners, renters, regular Californians, taxpayers all over the state are picking up the tab for these disasters. What we're asking is why and how is this fair? It isn't. And it needs to stop. Will you stand on the side of regular Californians like me? Or are you going to side with corporate interests? Those are the two choices.
Great, thank you so much. Thank you. I now want to bring up co-author of the bill, Senator Henry Stern, who's just a tremendous climate champion and a tremendous representative for the Los Angeles area.
Thanks, Senator Wiener, and appreciate everyone being here today. I'm sorry we have to run this kind of legislation in the first place, and that disasters are getting worse, and that people who thought they were safe have had that wake-up call. I had that wake-up call in the Woolsey fire. Barbara, who you're going to hear from, had a similar one where you lose everything, and you thought you were, you didn't think you were in the fire zone, you didn't think you were vulnerable, and yet these firestorms come, and it's 90 miles an hour wind over the ridge, and you've never seen it before in your life, and you wonder, how did this happen? And we know what happened, because we burnt a lot of fossil fuel, and we haven't actually managed it, and it's making it all worse. I think we're going to rectify a historic injustice with this legislation, and I think Senator Wiener's been brave, but also prescient as our budget leader for the state, not just as a climate champion, but really looking at the very stark reality that $1 billion that ratepayers just had to pick up to keep the FAIR Plan moving is probably not the last time, and that this is going to keep coming. And the inability for the insurance industry to go anywhere else where costs are actually caused, and that the law ought to actually allow them to pursue such a claim, it's a paradigm that's inherently broken, and it's going to hurt working people and people just trying to get to work and drive their car, and you add on top of that climate-fueled supercharged disaster scenario that the oil industry has primarily caused, as well as some of our other largest polluters, that this bill will finally bring to the table. But you add on to that the tariff war that's going on right now, thanks to this administration back east, and the cost of these rebuilds that Barbara's been through, and Moira, I pray that you're going to go through and emerge victorious on the other end of. It's going to supercharge those costs too. We're going to see the cost of recovery, especially if we can't count on consistent federal funding, go up more and more. So not only the rest of the housing crisis, but our rebuilds are going to be delayed because these tariff wars are driving up everything from lumber to metal to material. So we're up against it here, and it's shocking to me. Well, I guess we shouldn't be so surprised, but that the oil industry would rally this allegedly sympathetic group and sort of gin everyone's fears up that they should even pay one small amount of this cost, not even the bulk of it, right? We're not even talking about them paying, polluters paying for all of it. Just pay a little bit, like maybe your fair share, and even that is too much. So I hope this bill, I'll be hearing it later today in the Judiciary Committee. We're excited that it's moving. We think that the time has come for this idea, and I no longer live in those fire zones. I've left them, and I've watched my whole town burn down. The last home I just lived in during our past fires, I went back there, and there's nothing left. It's a totally surreal feeling when you feel like everywhere you grew up and everything you had is gone. And the greatest insult to that injury is then bankrupting your neighbors, cities and miles away to say, this is our greatest tragedy. Now we're going to stiff you on the bill. So that has to change, and I appreciate the bill. So let's move forward.
Thank you, Senator Stern. I now would like to call up Melissa Romero from California Environmental Voters, one of our sponsors.
Of course.
Thank you everyone so much for tuning in. My name is Melissa Romero with California Environmental Voters. We are a proud co-sponsor of SB 222. I want to start by saying that Big Oil knew For 70 years, they knew that their pollution was fueling climate change, and they chose to lie about it and hide the science. They raked in trillions in profits while Californians lost homes, jobs, and peace of mind. Now they want us to pay for the bill for the damage that they caused. Let's be clear. The insurance industry was never meant to be a bailout fund for big oil. But today, Californians are paying more than ever just to stay insured and keep their mortgages. Some can't even buy a home or keep the one that they have because insurance is unaffordable or unavailable. This is totally unacceptable. The state's largest insurer is now asking for a 22% rate hike just because of the LA fire claims alone. That's an extra $841 out of pocket for the average insurance policyholder in California. Meanwhile, Big Oil has paid $0 towards the climate disasters that they fueled. So SB 222 is simple. It asks Big Oil to be a good neighbor, not to pay the whole bill, but to pay their fair share. This bill is a climate solution and an affordable housing solution because you can't solve one without the other. If you can't get insurance, you can't get a mortgage, you can't keep your house. Renters also stand to benefit from this policy because with this solution, landlords who are getting increased insurance rates won't have to pass that along in the form of increased rent. So SB 222 is asking to bring the balance back to the insurance market by allowing extreme weather survivors and their insurers to recover costs from those companies that created the crisis that we're in. The insurance affordability crisis doesn't stop without SB 222 passing. California leaders face a clear choice today: protect people or protect polluter profits.
Thank you, Melissa. And then our final speaker of the day, Barbara Ferris, survivor of the Woolsey fire, and whose elderly mother just lost her home in the Palisades fire. Thank you for being here.
Good afternoon. Thank you, everybody, for coming. Weird to be triggered after 6 years. 6.5 years ago, I lost my home of 23 years to the Woolsey fire. My husband and I raised our 3 children there, so we lost more than possessions. The family's sense of time, place, and history went up in flames that day, and I just remembered we called ourselves climate change refugees 6.5 years ago. Rebuilding us, for us, took 3 years, and guess what? We were fortunate, because it turns out, because there are over 50% of Woolsey burnouts who still have not returned home as of today. We rebuilt a hardened home with sustainable and fire-resistant materials during COVID to prevent the devastation of losing our home in a subsequent wildfire. Yeah, but then 3 months ago, my 101, more than elderly, she's ancient, my 101-year-old mother lost our family home in the Palisades fire. She'd been there 58 years, and we really thought we were gonna be able to hospice her there, and she was gonna be able to die at home. It's not unique. There are so many Los Angeles who are dealing with these multi-generational issues right now. More mementos, more memories in the place where she and my father raised 6 children. We're all senior citizens now, and we're going through it again. Why should we, the people, bear the punishing costs that these climate disasters inflict upon us? We've already borne the costs, emotional, look at me, and financial, of devastating wildfires. Climate disasters have also fueled the insurance crisis in this state. The increasing severity and frequency of climate-related disasters have made it more difficult and expensive for all of Californians to secure insurance. We're all experiencing it, from the million-dollar mansions to the tiny homes that were in Altadena, these beautiful cottages. We can't get insurance. SB 222 authorizes sharing the costs happening right now. It's not in the future. It's not like that. With the conglomerates who caused it and made the effects more costly and dangerous for all Californians. This bill is an essential step towards ensuring a fair and just distribution of the cost of climate-fueled disasters. This is the moment. So I urge you, please, pass this bill, convince your colleagues, do it for all of Californians. Thank you.
Thank you. And again, thank you to our survivors for just doing something very, very difficult. Those are our speakers, and if there's any questions for the press. Yes. I'm not sure exactly what you're referring to, but for the insurance industry, this will literally be an ability to replenish the money that they're paying out and to seek subrogation so that they're not only going to the policyholders. So it doesn't increase costs for insurance. It's the opposite. Yeah, I thought the Senate Judiciary Committee analysis properly dealt with those arguments because they're specious. They really have no basis. I mean, a cruel and unusual punishment argument. I mean, it's really like a kitchen sink kind of situation. I have no problem with people opposing my bills. That's democracy. But when folks make baseless arguments, I don't like that. They should make, they should, but they did, and there are no constitutional issues with this bill. The idea that, and one of the arguments they're making is that because the bill looks back to their behavior over the decades in terms of promoting fossil fuel and even forcing people to use fossil fuel, despite the fact that they knew that it would lead to these disasters. How is that any different than with OxyContin? we didn't just like blind ourselves to what those executives did in pushing OxyContin on and getting people addicted to opioids. We didn't ignore what the asbestos companies did. So they've raised a number of arguments that are just frankly not well-founded. Great. Thank you so much, everyone.